Ethan Cole never thought his life would lead him here, standing on a polished deck of an alien royal cruiser, surrounded by beings whose eyes glowed like stars and whose armor shimmered like flowing water. He was just an engineer, trained to keep ships from falling apart in the cold dark of space. Yet somehow he had been chosen to join a human delegation to the Veyari Empire, one of the most powerful alien kingdoms known to mankind. At first, Ethan felt like an intruder. The alien ship was enormous, its hallways wide and tall, filled with strange glowing symbols carved into the walls. Every Veyari who passed looked at him with curiosity. To them, humans were newcomers to the galactic stage, still young, still untested. Ethan was not a soldier, not a diplomat. He was only there because the cruiser had agreed to let a few human engineers observe their systems for the sake of technical exchange. Ethan knew what that really meant. The aliens wanted to prove how advanced they were. Humans were expected to watch, nod, and feel impressed, but things never went according to plans. 3 days into the journey, alarms blared across the ship. Lights flickered and the steady hum of the engines stuttered like a dying heartbeat. Ethan had been in the engineering wing when it started, and he saw the fear ripple through the alien crew. The Veyari were proud and skilled, but they were not used to sudden failure. Their ships were built with layers of automated systems, each one meant to keep problems from ever reaching this point. And yet, here they were. Reactor conduit breach, containment failing, shouted one of the alien officers, his voice sharp and panicked. Ethan's eyes darted to the glowing consoles. Even though the language was different, he understood enough from the symbols and diagrams. The coolant lines were clogged. If the reactor overheated, the ship would suffer catastrophic damage. The crew was frozen. They kept arguing, calling for commands, waiting for orders that never came. Ethan acted. He pushed past the stunned aliens, his boots ringing on the metal floor, and reached the main control panel. His hands flew across the glowing runes. They weren't like human keyboards, but he had studied the basics during training. Bypass the clogged flow, he muttered to himself. Reroute through secondary channels. The aliens gasped as he pulled open a maintenance hatch and dove inside. The conduit chamber was hot and loud, steam pouring from cracked seals. Ethan grabbed a set of tools from his belt and worked quickly, ignoring the burn of the heat on his face. He cut into a backup line, twisted a valve open, and forced the coolant to flow again. The reactor's angry hum steadied. The alarms grew quieter. When Ethan finally crawled back out covered in grease and sweat, the alien crew was staring at him in silence. Their glowing eyes blinked, their faces unreadable. "It's stable now," Ethan said, wiping his hands on his uniform. "You'll want to replace the damaged sections before long, but at least we won't blow up today." For a moment, no one moved. Then a tall figure stepped forward. She was dressed differently from the others, her armor finer, her crown-like headpiece gleaming under the ship's lights. Her presence made the crew bow their heads at once. Ethan froze. He knew who she was, Princess Lyra of the Veyari Empire. Her name had been spoken often during the mission briefings. She was the heir to one of the largest empires in the galaxy, known for her sharp mind and iron will. Many said she was untouchable, a symbol rather than a person. Yet right now she looked at Ethan with something unexpected. Curiosity. "You, the human," she said slowly, her voice soft but steady. "You acted when my crew could not. Why?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Because someone had to. If I waited for orders, we'd all be dust by now." Her lips curved into something like a smile. The alien crew shifted uneasily. None of them dared to meet her eyes, but Ethan could not look away. "Humans," Lyra said at last. "Your kind is always surprising." Ethan gave a half-smile, trying to lighten the tension. "What can I say? We're full of bad habits, including rushing in without permission." To his surprise, Lyra laughed softly. It was not a mocking laugh, but a real one, warm and clear. The sound made the air feel lighter, as though the whole ship had taken a breath. The crew exchanged glances. A human making the princess laugh? That was unheard of. When the crisis was fully contained, Ethan expected to be dismissed, maybe even scolded for interfering. Instead, Lyra invited him to walk with her through the ship. As they moved through the grand hallways, she studied him with open curiosity. "On my world, engineers are scholars. They are not expected to crawl into reactors themselves. Why did you risk your life?" Ethan shrugged. "Where I come from, an engineer's job is simple. If something breaks, you fix it. Doesn't matter if it's dangerous. People depend on us, and I guess I don't like seeing anyone panic when I know I can help. Lyra tilted her head, considering his words. Her glowing eyes softened, though her voice remained formal. That is a strange kind of bravery. Ethan chuckled. Or stupidity. Depends who you ask. For a moment they walked in silence. Then, without thinking, Ethan tried to make a joke. So, saving a royal ship, does that earn me a medal or maybe a marriage proposal? The words slipped out before he could stop himself. He expected offense, maybe even punishment, but Lyra surprised him again. Her smile returned, small but unmistakable. Marry you? She repeated, her voice filled with amusement. Perhaps in another life. Ethan froze, blinking at her. He had meant it as a joke, but her answer felt different. Not a rejection. Not anger. Something else. Something he didn't dare name. The moment passed as quickly as it came. Guards approached, bowing to the princess, and she turned back into the untouchable royal figure again. Yet as they walked, she glanced at him once more. And Ethan knew this was only the beginning. In that single smile, that single unexpected laugh, a door had opened, and Ethan was both terrified and curious to see where it would lead. After the reactor crisis, life on the Veyari cruiser returned to its usual rhythm. But something between Ethan and Princess Lyra had shifted. The crew whispered behind their backs, exchanging glances whenever the human engineer and the princess appeared together. Ethan, of course, tried to ignore the attention. He had always been a practical man, grounded in tools, circuits, and engines, not courtly intrigue. But Lyra seemed drawn to him, and he could not help noticing it either. It started small. She asked for his opinion about the ship's systems, wanting to understand why humans approached engineering differently from the Veyari. Ethan explained his techniques in simple terms, avoiding technical jargon as much as possible, but the princess listened intently, asking questions that were sharp yet curious. You humans risk your lives often, Lyra said one day, her glowing eyes studying him as he worked on a diagnostic console. Why is that so natural for you? On my world, engineers are expected to remain safe, to observe, not to act directly. Ethan wiped his hands on a rag, thinking carefully before answering. Maybe it's because we trust each other, or maybe because we can't wait for someone else to solve our problems. When things go wrong, we fix them. That's all. Lyra tilted her head, considering his words. I do not think I have ever met anyone like you. Someone who acts without hesitation, yet is careful and thoughtful. Someone human. Ethan laughed softly. That's a compliment, I think. Or maybe you're just being polite, she smiled. The corner of her mouth lifted slightly, and for the first time, Ethan felt as though she were seeing him as more than a visitor. More than just a human. Over the next few days, Lyra began finding reasons to be near him. She would walk through the engineering wing under the guise of inspection, linger beside him while he worked, asking questions about human culture, history, and humor. Ethan enjoyed the conversations. She had a quick mind and an open curiosity that was rare among the alien elite. One afternoon, as the cruiser passed near a glowing nebula, the ship's lights dimmed in the swirling colors. Ethan was repairing a minor fault in one of the auxiliary engines when Lyra appeared silently behind him. Do you ever feel trapped, Ethan? She asked softly. He paused, screwdriver in hand, surprised by the sudden question. Trapped? Not really. I work a lot, sure, but I'm free to make my own choices. Lyra's glowing eyes softened. I envy that. My life is planned. Every action, every decision, every word, even who I may one day marry, is not mine to choose. Ethan set down the tool and turned to her. That must be hard. I can't even imagine living like that. Lyra let out a small sigh. You cannot. That is why I find humans so fascinating. You do what you choose. You speak what you feel. You laugh even when things are difficult. It is a kind of strength my people rarely show. Ethan nodded. We do what we must to survive, I guess. And sometimes, we do things just because they make us happy, even if others don't understand. The two of them fell into a quiet moment. Outside, the nebula's colors spilled through the ship's transparent walls, painting their faces in purple and gold. Ethan felt a strange connection forming, one he had not expected. The human engineer and the alien princess, two very different worlds, somehow understanding each other without words. In the following days, their bond grew stronger. Lyra would share her fears, the pressure of being heir to an empire, and the loneliness that came with power. Ethan listened without judgment, offering simple human wisdom that seemed to comfort her. "You humans are fearless in ways I do not understand," Lyra said one. Ethan and Princess Lyra's growing connection had been quiet, almost hidden amidst the hum of the Veyari cruiser. But the galaxy does not wait for hearts to form. Danger came faster than either of them expected. It began with a sudden jolt. Alarms screamed through the corridors, red lights flashing against polished walls. Ethan was in the engine bay, checking a minor system fault when the ship shook violently. Tools clattered to the floor, and a cold, sharp vibration ran along the hull. "Unidentified vessels approaching fast," shouted a Veyari officer. His glowing eyes widened in alarm. "Enemy fleet detected. Unknown ships. Weapons powered." Ethan's heart raced. He had studied alien spacecraft, but the thought of a real attack was different. His mind worked quickly, cataloging options. If the cruiser fell, the princess and crew would be trapped. He wiped grease from his hands and ran toward the main control room. Lyra's advisors were already there, panicked and shouting orders at one another. Ethan ignored the chaos. He scanned the battle interface and saw what no one else seemed to notice. The enemy ships were faster, more agile than the Veyari expected. Their attack was not random, it was targeted, precise. They wanted Princess Lyra. "Sir," one officer stammered, "we cannot hold them. Their shields are adaptive, they match ours." Ethan's mind raced. Adaptive shields meant a direct attack would fail, but he knew the ship's auxiliary channels might be exploited. He turned to the console and spoke calmly, his voice firm. "Divert power to the secondary conduits. Open the maintenance hatches near the forward shields. I can reroute energy manually to overload their sensors." The Veyari stared at him. They had no words for his calm, practical tone. Yet Lyra's eyes met his, glowing brighter than ever. There was trust there, a quiet command without speaking it. "Do it," she said simply. "I trust you." Ethan nodded and moved into the maintenance corridors. The halls were narrower than expected, and the sounds of battle echoed from outside. Distant explosions, the groan of metal, alarms screaming through the ship. He worked fast, rerouting conduits and opening channels that the Veyari had never dared touch. Sparks flew around him and heat burned against his skin, but he focused on the task. Meanwhile, Lyra did not stay behind. She moved through the corridors beside the crew, directing defenses, sealing bulkheads, and even helping guide small escape shuttles for injured crew members. Despite her royal status, she refused to remain idle. Ethan caught her eye as he twisted a valve open, redirecting coolant to the energy shields. "Princess, you shouldn't—" "I can't watch from the sidelines," she interrupted. "This is my ship, my crew, and I will not hide while you risk yourself alone." Ethan felt a surge of admiration. The princess was not just a symbol. She was brave, strong, and alive in a way few royals ever were. Suddenly, a section of the corridor exploded, throwing Ethan against the wall. Debris fell around him. He coughed, feeling pain along his shoulder, but he pushed through. He had to finish the reroute or the ship would be lost. Lyra was at his side in an instant. She grabbed his arm, pulling him clear of falling metal. "Ethan, you must move." "I can't leave it," he said, struggling to stand. "If I don't redirect this, then we do it together," she snapped. And in that moment, Ethan realized something. She trusted him completely, and he trusted her. Side by side, they worked. She held panels in place. He twisted valves. Sparks flew, alarms screamed, but the corridor remained standing. By sheer effort and quick thinking, they managed to overload the enemy sensors. The attacking ships flinched, their weapons misfiring against one another. The cruiser gained a small but vital advantage. The enemy could no longer lock on accurately. Yet the battle was far from over. One enemy ship broke through the outer shield, hurling a beam directly toward the observation deck. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He ran toward the central control, calculating the fastest way to divert the power to shields. "Princess, stay down," he shouted, but Lyra didn't move. She planted herself beside him, her hand on the console. "You taught me humans act," she said simply. I am acting. Ethan felt a mix of fear and awe. The princess was standing with him, not behind him, not hidden, but facing the danger herself. Together, they managed to divert energy in the nick of time. The beam struck the reinforced shields, cracking them slightly, but saving the ship from total destruction. After a tense moment, the enemy ships withdrew slightly, regrouping for another attack. Ethan and Lyra stood in the control room, breathing heavily, covered in dust and grime. The crew around them was exhausted but inspired. Even the highest-ranking officers gave nods of respect. "You did it," one of them said to Ethan, barely believing it. "You did it," Ethan corrected, nodding at Lyra. "We did it together." The princess's eyes softened. "You are remarkable, Ethan Cole. You and your kind. Perhaps humans are not as fragile as my people thought." Ethan smiled tiredly. "We're stubborn, and we work well under pressure. Guess it's in our nature." Lyra reached out and lightly touched his arm. "I never thought I would say this now, but I am glad you are here. With me." Ethan froze, feeling heat rise in his chest. Her words were more than gratitude. They carried trust, respect, and something deeper, an acknowledgement of connection that transcended human and Veyari differences. The alarm bells rang again, signaling a retreat from the enemy fleet, but Ethan and Lyra remained together side by side. For the first time, he realized that this mission was no longer just a diplomatic assignment or an engineering test. It was personal, and in the midst of war he understood something profound. The bond they shared could be stronger than the guns, stronger than the shields, stronger than any empire. After the battle, as the cruiser sailed into calmer space, Lyra led Ethan to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, glittering like diamonds against the velvet black. "You are human," she said softly, "yet you are more capable, more fearless, and more alive than anyone I have known." Ethan laughed quietly, exhaustion mixed with relief. "Thanks, Princess. I think we make a pretty good team, don't we?" She smiled, a faint blush lighting her glowing cheeks. "More than a good team, you have my trust, my respect, perhaps more than even I expected." Ethan felt his heart skip a beat. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt too small. Instead, he nodded, letting the silence speak between them. Outside, the stars seemed to twinkle more brightly, as if acknowledging the courage and connection of two beings from different worlds who had faced death together and survived. That night, Ethan could not sleep. He kept replaying the battle, remembering every spark, every near miss, every moment Lyra had stood beside him. He realized that their connection had grown deeper, forged in the heat of danger, in the shared fear and trust. And he knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. The crisis had passed, but their story, their bond, was only beginning. The battle had ended, but the aftermath lingered like a heavy fog. The Veyari cruiser sailed through quiet, space engines humming steadily, yet the crew remained tense. Damage reports were being filed, repairs scheduled, and morale slowly rebuilding after the close encounter. Ethan had spent hours in the engineering bay, patching small faults left by the attack. His hands were grimy, his uniform streaked with grease and soot, but his mind kept replaying the moments when he and Princess Lyra had faced danger together. Every spark, every crack of metal, every time he had shielded her from harm, he could not forget. When he finally left the engineering bay, he found her waiting for him in the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the nebula cast gentle colors across the glass walls. She was silent at first, simply watching the cosmic display. Ethan noticed the way her glowing eyes softened in the starlight, and he felt a nervous warmth in his chest. "You should rest," she said finally, her voice gentle. "You've worked enough today." Ethan shook his head. "I can't. Too much needs fixing, and I need to make sure the ship is safe." Lyra smiled faintly. "You always put duty first. It is human of you." He laughed softly, though it sounded hollow to his own ears. "Maybe, Or maybe I just don't want to think about what could have gone wrong. Lyra turned to face him fully. Her gaze held something deeper than gratitude, something vulnerable, something raw. Ethan, I need to speak. Honestly. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. The look in her eyes made him pause, unsure of what was coming. I do not know what humans call this, she began. But my feelings for you, they are real. I do not care about protocol or tradition or what my people expect. I feel something I have never felt before. Ethan froze. Her words were a confession, a truth he had never expected to hear. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. The galaxy outside seemed to hold its breath. Lyra stepped closer, her hand brushing lightly against his arm. When I am with you, I feel free. Not as a princess, not as an heir to an empire, but as Lyra. Just Lyra. Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to tell her that he felt the same, that he had admired her courage and humor, that he had been captivated by her intelligence and warmth since the first moment they spoke. But fear held him back. You're a princess, he finally said, his voice low. I'm just a human. My life is simple compared to yours. I don't know if I can— You do not have to know anything, she interrupted softly. Just be here with me. That is enough. Ethan felt a pull in his chest, a longing he could not den. The Veeri cruiser finally reached Lyra's homeworld, a planet of glittering cities, floating towers, and vast oceans that reflected the light of 3 suns. To the people of the Empire, the arrival of the princess was a moment of celebration and scrutiny. To Ethan Cole, it felt like stepping into a different universe, a world filled with rules, traditions, and expectations he did not fully understand. As the cruiser docked, Ethan noticed the tension in Lyra's posture. She had returned to her royal role, the crown of duty resting heavily on her head once more. Her advisors waited, expressions unreadable, but their eyes were sharp and calculating. The court would not tolerate any deviation from tradition, and Ethan's presence was already a scandal in their eyes. You know what is coming, Ethan said quietly as they walked through the gilded halls of the palace. They will not approve of us. Lyra's glowing eyes met his. I know, but I cannot turn back now. I will not. Not after everything we have shared. Not after the trust I have given you. They entered the grand throne room, a vast hall with towering ceilings, golden columns, and intricate mosaics depicting the Empire's history. At the center stood the High Council, the most powerful advisors and officials of the Veeri Empire. Their faces were stern, their bodies rigid, their eyes fixed on the princess and the human who dared follow her into the hall. Your Highness, the eldest counselor began, voice cold and formal. You have returned from your journey with a human. This is troubling. He is not of noble birth, not of this empire. What is the meaning of his presence here? Lyra held her ground, her hand brushing lightly against Ethan's arm in reassurance. He is an engineer, she said firmly. He saved my ship when it was under attack. Without him, many lives would have been lost, including mine. His skill and courage are proven. The council murmured among themselves, displeasure clear in their tone. One advisor stepped forward, voice sharper. That is not the point, Your Highness. Your position requires alliances, not affection for outsiders. Your actions could be seen as a threat to our traditions. Ethan felt the weight of their judgment. He was just a human, untrained in diplomacy, standing in a court where a single misstep could change everything. He glanced at Lyra, whose eyes burned with determination. She had made her choice. I am aware of my duty, Lyra said, her voice ringing through the hall. But I am also aware of my right to choose my life. I will not marry someone for convenience or political gain. I will not abandon what is real. And right now, what is real is him. The room erupted in protests. Voices overlapped, heated and urgent. Ethan could feel the tension building, the pressure of centuries of tradition pressing down on them both. He wanted to speak, to defend Lyra, to declare his loyalty, but the words caught in his throat. He was not a politician. He was just a human who had chosen to act as he always did when faced with danger. Lyra turned to him, her gaze steady. Ethan, speak if you wish, but speak from your heart. He took a deep breath. I am just a human, he began, his voice trembling slightly. I do not belong here. I do not understand all your rules, your customs, or your history. But I do know this, I care for the princess. I care for her life, her safety, and her freedom. I will stand by her, no matter what anyone says, and I will not let her face the world alone. A hush fell over the council. Ethan's simple, honest words carried a weight the Veari had not expected. Humans were often seen as fragile or reckless, but here was one who spoke with courage, integrity, and conviction. You speak boldly for one so untested, the eldest counselor said, narrowing his eyes, and yet there is truth in your words. Still, the Empire will not tolerate such irregularity. Lyra took Ethan's hand, letting the warmth of his presence steady her. I do not ask the council to approve of our bond, she said firmly. I ask only that you respect it. I am the princess. My life is mine to live. I choose him just as I would choose to live or to breathe. The council murmured again, some outraged, others thoughtful. It was clear that the princess's decision was unprecedented. She was breaking centuries of tradition simply by declaring her choice. And yet she stood unflinching, radiating authority and courage. Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to say more, to prove himself worthy. But he realized that words were insufficient. Action had always been his way. He reached out, touching Lyra's hand gently, a silent vow that he would stand beside her no matter the consequences. One of the counselors, a younger figure with sharp eyes, spoke finally. Your Highness, if this human is to remain by your side, there must be proof of his worth. Can he demonstrate his loyalty, his skill, and his courage in ways that honor the Empire? Lyra nodded. He has already done so. He saved my ship. He saved my life. That is proof enough. The council debated fiercely, but their words were drowned out by the undeniable fact. Lyra's choice was firm. And in her eyes, Ethan saw a spark of hope, a quiet determination that inspired him to face whatever came next. Days passed as the court prepared for formal recognition of the princess's decision, but obstacles arose. Advisors whispered warnings of political backlash. Some factions demanded that Ethan leave the palace immediately, arguing that a human's presence could destabilize alliances. Ethan felt the pressure mounting. Leaving would protect Lyra, but it would break his heart. Staying could invite danger, but it would affirm his loyalty. He wrestled with his emotions, realizing that the choice he made would shape both their futures. Finally, on the day before the official council decision, Lyra sought him out in the palace gardens. The artificial sun bathed the scene in golden light, and the scent of flowering plants filled the air. She approached him with quiet confidence, her eyes searching his. Ethan, she said softly, I do not care what the council says. I do not care about the traditions. All I care about is you. Will you stay? Will you be with me even if the world opposes it? Ethan looked at her, his heart racing. He saw the trust in her eyes, the courage in her stance, and the vulnerability she rarely showed to anyone else. He knew this was his moment. The choice that would define everything. He began, his voice steadying. I will stay, not because it is easy, not because it is safe, but because I choose to. I choose you, Princess Lyra. I will face whatever comes, opposition, danger, or doubt, so long as I am with you. Lyra's eyes shone brighter than any star he had ever seen. Then we are together, she said simply. No matter what comes. And in that moment, Ethan felt a sense of clarity he had never known. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and often cruel. But here, in this small garden, two beings from different worlds had made a choice. To stand together, to defy expectation, and to trust in each other. The council's final meeting was tense. Advisors voiced concerns, objections, and warnings. Yet Lyra remained resolute, and Ethan stood by her side, calm, confident, and unwavering. In the end, the council relented, recognizing that the bond between the princess and the human engineer could not be denied. They were forced to accept it, if only grudgingly. As the formal ceremony concluded, Lyra turned to Ethan, her hand slipping into his. You have made a place in my life, Ethan Cole. Not as a visitor, not as a curiosity, but as someone I trust, someone I value, someone I choose. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. And I choose you, Princess. Every day I choose you. Outside, the twin suns of the planet dipped toward the horizon, casting golden light across the palace. It was a beginning, uncertain, challenging, but theirs. And in that shared choice, they found strength, courage, and hope for the future. Months had passed since Ethan Cole had stood beside Princess Lyra, declaring his choice to remain with her. The Veyari Empire had slowly adjusted to the reality of a human standing by the princess's side. While some advisors still whispered, and old traditions were debated in hushed corridors, most had learned that Ethan was more than a visitor. He was a symbol of courage, loyalty, and unexpected unity. The cruiser that had brought Ethan to the Veyari Empire had long since returned to human space, leaving him to acclimate to the royal world. Life was different from what he had known on Earth or aboard human ships. The palace was vast, with halls that gleamed like crystal, gardens that stretched beyond sight, and technology that was far beyond human engineering. But it also held the weight of tradition, expectation, and political scrutiny. Yet, Ethan had adapted. He spent his days learning about the Empire, assisting with engineering projects and exploring the delicate balance between human intuition and Veyari precision. More importantly, he spent his days with Lyra, whose presence was both commanding and comforting. Together they navigated the challenges of life as rulers, diplomats, and most importantly, partners. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the glittering city, Lyra led Ethan to the balcony of the royal tower. The wind carried the scent of alien flowers, and the light painted the world in shades of gold and rose. "You have changed my life, Ethan," she said softly, her eyes glowing in the morning light, "not just because of what you have done, but because of who you are. You see the world differently. You see me differently. You remind me that I am more than a princess, I am Lyra." Ethan smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. "I'm just a human," he said, shrugging lightly. "But I've always believed that humans can do more than they're expected to. We take risks, make mistakes, and sometimes we surprise.